Hi there, my name is Mindy Mandell, and I'm calling this channel All About Platonism because I think that name captures what I'm trying to do here. I don't want to look at Plato's dialogues as though each one is separate and can be looked at without considering the whole. I also don't want to consider the different theories individually, like the theory of forms or the theory of recollection, or looking at the allegory of the cave, or you may have learned something about Plato's dialectic, and these pieces are often taught as separate ideas, and each one individually is maybe interesting by itself. But in order to really understand what Platonism is about, you have to put them all together into a cohesive whole. So that's what I'm planning on doing here. And I think you'll find very quickly, if you watch these videos, that I'm not an academic and I don't take an academic approach. One of the ways I'm different is in that I do look at this cohesive whole. But another way is because I think in academia, Platonism is often treated in an atheistic or at least agnostic sort of way, where the spiritual aspects are considered kind of like the flavor of the culture. And it's interesting in that sense, but you don't have to understand, you don't have to bring spirituality into the metaphysics or the deeper philosophical discussions in order to understand them. I don't agree with that idea. I think in order to really understand what Platonism is about, we need to understand that it is a philosophical way of life that is deeply rooted in spirituality. In fact, Socrates was a deeply spiritual man. And well, a little bit about me, maybe if I tell you a little bit about me, you'll understand where I'm coming from and you'll have a better sense of what to expect in this series. I took only a Philosophy 101 class in university. I didn't end up becoming a philosophy major. I thought about it, but I wasn't terribly taken by any of the philosophers in that class, and one of them was Plato. We learned the theory of forms as this kind of like blueprints in the sky kind of idea, like there's a form for tree, and that's why we recognize trees of different shapes and sizes, and that's not really what the theory of forms is. But I left that class not terribly impressed with Plato. I ended up becoming a poli-sci major, and in political science classes also we would sometimes read excerpts from some of Plato's dialogues, because as you know, some of them have, at least on the surface, a political theme. And when you take it on face value, as we did in those political science classes, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, or it's nothing really interesting, or maybe there's a few interesting ideas, but a lot of it just doesn't really make sense, and I didn't understand why Plato was so popular. Later on, I learned, of course, that Plato was not talking really about politics. Like in the Republic, for example, when we get to that dialogue, we'll see that actually Plato set up an analogy of the city-state to the soul, and so he was using the city-state to help his interlocutors understand the soul, which means you have to take everything he says about the city-state and then apply it to the soul. And so it's really a spiritual dialogue, essentially. But on the surface, there is obviously some political aspects to it as well. But you have to see that spiritual side in order to really understand Plato. And I didn't learn that until after university. I met someone who reads Plato in the way that I do now. And he introduced me to that way of reading Plato. And when I learned that, and I started reading Plato in that way, it really grabbed me. And honestly, it was exactly what I was looking for at that time in my life. And so I threw myself into it. And in a few years, I met a philosopher named Dr. Pierre Grimes. He's the founder of the Noetic Society in Huntington Beach, California. And I've been studying with him for some 20 years now. I do not live in California myself, so I've been studying long distance, but with the internet now, it's not so difficult to do that. And so I feel very blessed to have had that opportunity. And so what I want to do in this series is go through Plato's dialogues, but in a way that connects them all, connects the ideas, and shows the coherent whole of everything that he was doing and what Platonism really is. Each video I'm aiming for to be about 20 minutes long. Some of them may be longer, some shorter, but I think the average YouTube viewer's attention span is about 20 minutes, at least that's mine. And so that's what I'm going to aim for. from next week, from next week, I want to start getting into Plato's ideas, and I'm going to start with the virtues because they are really central to understanding the goal that Socrates had when taking people through these different dialogues and introducing his different ideas. We really need to understand the virtues, and I think they are greatly, greatly misunderstood. So I want to clarify and clear up some of those misunderstandings right up front so that we're all on the same page. The first misunderstanding that I see is that they're often treated as something separate from the philosophical side. However, wisdom is one of the virtues, and so how can you separate that from philosophy? So you really have to understand how it connects, how the virtues connect to all the other teachings. The second misunderstanding that I think exists with the virtues is that so very often they are treated as behaviors. The virtues are not behaviors. However, if you read Platonism in an academic, objective sort of way, it makes sense to look at them that way because you're looking at Socrates as some sort of literary figure who you're trying to look at him, at his behavior, and trying to understand from that what Plato means by the virtues. And when you do that, what ends up happening is we end up projecting our own state of mind onto Socrates. And, we all have our own ignorance and whatever in us, and, no judging me too, but we bring that with us into our reading of it and judging his behavior. And then what ends up happening is we come up with these conclusions that, like temperance or self-restraint, it's sometimes translated as, means that you're repressing your emotions, or you don't have emotions, or emotions are something bad, or some nonsense like this. That's not at all what the virtues are about. And so what we're going to do is look at the virtues as states of mind. Because if you want to internalize these teachings, if you want to understand how they relate to you and what you can get out of them personally, it means you have to understand the state of mind that a person would have to be in order for these behaviors to seem natural. Because the point is not to pretend that you're this way or that way, or the point is not to hide certain emotions or certain feelings, or to repress what is considered to be unwise but feels natural for you. The point is to be in a state of mind in which this behavior is natural, and acting in a way that is considered unvirtuous, according to Platonism, would no longer seem logical or desirable to you. So to understand that state of mind, you have to look at the virtues as states of mind. And that's what we're going to do next week. So I do hope you'll join me. If this series sounds interesting to you, then I hope that you will subscribe so that you will get messages each time I put out a new video. I'm going to aim for about once a week. We'll see how that goes. I think it's possible. And also, if you like what you've seen, please hit the like button so that other people know that this is something worth watching. And I thank you for your time and hope that you'll join me next week. Thank you.